female, Mahu, who came all the way from Tahiti. Today, we're seeing all types of people being involved in healing and in helping. And, they should be respected for what they do. When you read about, for example, Asian doctors being ostracized or bullied because they're Asian, it really hurts me. And everybody who's in the healing biz is doing something really important. And we need to recognize that.
Yeah, we're definitely in a place right now where everyone is having to acknowledge and admit how important people in the healing and healthcare industries are. And it's a shame that it's taken a global pandemic for us to truly appreciate people and know who's important in our lives. Well, let's talk a little bit more about your film specifically. It's animated, which is different from most of your documentaries that you've done. How did it become animated? How did this story specifically come to you? Yeah. And what was a little bit of the process of getting this completed?
We've been working on this film for almost 10 years, and we've actually been working on it hard for 5 years. It started when we first met Kumuhina, who is our lead director now, who is herself transgender and is Native Hawaiian. And we made a film about her for PBS. One of the stories she told us is that there were these stones down in Waikiki that she used to play around on and hang out on when she was a young boy, and had only learned as an adult that they represent these transgender spirits. We actually started researching this hard in the library about 5 years ago and traced down the very original manuscript. And then as we thought this would be a story worth sharing, it was a question of how to do that. It was pretty clear live action or documentary wouldn't really work because it's a legendary story about legendary characters. And animation just seemed like a logical way to go. And we're so glad we did, because I think you can give people this legendary sort of feeling without stereotyping them, and that you can really only do by animation.
Now, how was the style selected or chosen? It was just so beautiful and so soulful.
Thank you. So we decided with Daniel Sousa because we had seen his previous films, and they had that sort of legendary quality. He's always been interested in myths from all around the world. He'd also done some work on a PBS film about Native Americans where he had animated several of their legends, and it just seemed really perfect. And so I actually went through a list of everybody who was nominated for an Academy Award for short animation in the last 10 years. And he was one of the people that came up, and just on a whim, I wrote him an email, completely cold, and he answered back. And that started a really good relationship.
Wow. And so how long of a process was it from getting the story to how you were going to tell the story, and how you were going to, in what format? How long of a process was that?
Well, about 5 years. 2 years were in the library to find out the actual story, because we're not just revealing a hidden story. We actually had to dig out the story. It was so well hidden that it took that much research to figure out the real story about these healers. Then it was another year working with Hina on a script. Kumu Hina, the subject of our earlier film, is now the lead director on this project. And she was the one who decided, if we're going to tell this story, we have to tell it in a Hawaiian way. And she decided to do it in a rare, ancient Hawaiian dialect, rarely used now. So that took a year or so of doing.
Right.
And then we met with the animator and started. And animation takes a long time too. And Daniel works by himself. He draws every frame by hand. So 8 minutes is, well, it's a lot of frames. And it took about 8 months of just straight animation to get it done.
Wow. So are you fluent now?
I speak Ni'ihau Hawaiian. I speak like a rare dialect of Hawaiian.
Okay.
So, that's why it's my dialect. Yeah.
So the topic of transgendered spirits, transgendered energies, it's a part of their ongoing culture, but the conversation is becoming, as we talk on mainland America, is really something of newer acceptance. How do you think those two worlds are combining, and how do we see this moving forward to acceptance in the future?
Well, some people say the transgender revolution started with Caitlin a couple of years ago, but Hawaiians have understood the fluidity of gender since the beginnings of time. And it's part of their culture, it's woven into their stories, and it's still very much present today. So this is kind of old hat. What did happen is that as Hawaii got colonized and Christianized and missionaryized, that part of their culture got selectively suppressed. And this story in particular, the mahu part of Kapaemahu was taken art. The part about them being transgender was really selectively removed. So it's only in the last couple of years that we're seeing a resurgence of the understanding that this has always been part of Polynesian culture and a really important part as well.
So how is that being taught to the new generation? I saw in some of your other documentaries where we were looking at different younger people who are following this and understanding and accepting of themselves. How is this? We've got kids that are learning ancient cultures, but are still TikTok, TikTok, social media kids. How are these two worlds really, connecting?
I think in Hawaii, they're connecting really well. And the realization of Mahu as a sort of valued members of the community has really taken off in the last couple of years because of modern media. We did a little animated segment for our first film about Kumuhina. It's only a minute long. It's about Mahu. It's been seen by 2 million kids on Facebook. So it's actually kind of popular. We're hoping that that's a model for people outside of Hawaii and for the rest of the world. And I think sometimes it's actually helpful for people to see, oh, this is part of this isn't like just weird that it's just like this American thing. This is something that's been around for a while. So we hope that that will, make an impression on people.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about what's going on right now. Everyone's stuck at home and you're stuck in Hawaii. So, I mean, can we still use the terminology stuck if you're in Hawaii?
Yeah, Hawaii is a good place to be. It's always a good place to be. We're very fortunate to be allowed here as people that grew up and were born other places. I think that's really a privilege for us. And we try to respect that by doing everything we can for the culture. But in terms of being stuck, it's only like a 5-minute walk to the ocean and the surf and, an hour of freedom from the virus every day. And we appreciate that a whole lot.
Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Montclair, New Jersey, which is a suburb of New York. And then I spent 35 years in DC, right in downtown DC and working for the National Institutes of Health. So I'm an East Coast kind of guy.
Yeah, I'm from Philly originally. So I'm a Philly girl down here in Georgia. But now, how have people who have known you all your life and known you as a scientist, how have they accepted your life, filmmaker in Hawaii, living life now? Are they jealous? Right?
Well, I'm not supposed to say they are jealous because that would be boasting, but I live in Hawaii, so I don't really have to worry about it.
Right. You just post pictures and they have to think about it.
Yeah.
Well, was it weird for people if you was when you went from the sciences to I'm going to be a filmmaker now, or was it something that they saw a progression, or did it seem kind of drastic to other people?
It was sort of an organic procession, and I was really lucky to be with Joe, my partner, who has a background in human rights and civil rights type of work, and we both always had that. So I think for us, filmmaking wasn't so much a career, and it certainly wasn't a way to make money. It was more a way to express what we think is important and to get our point of view out. It's more like writing. Like we're not writers per se, but we, like everybody, use writing to express ourselves. And that's why we've been fortunate to collaborate with really great people like Hinale Moana, who brings the whole cultural aspect to us and the language aspect. Animators like Daniel, who does stuff that we couldn't even imagine doing. We've had good support from the public broadcast system, which I think sees the importance of the work. So yeah, it's not like it was a complete shock to people that I wanted to get my viewpoint across.
So, what are some of the projects that you'd like to do in the near future?
think, we felt kind of fortunate that we're doing animation right when COVID came along, because we were just applying for a new animated project. And we're like, oh, gosh, we can actually do this because we can't go out and shoot film anymore. And we can't put mics on people, at least for the current time. We're continuing this idea that ancient oral traditions still have a lot to teach us, and that these stories need to be brought out in their fullness, not toned down, not demahuized or anything else. We think there's a lot of old stories in Hawaii, in Tahiti, in Samoa, in Tonga, across the Pacific that are valuable, and we're working on those.
Oh, that's awesome. So that the next project's going to be animated as well?
It's going to be animated, and the title of the project is Kapaemahu, Kapo's Flying Vagina.
Oh, I know the last word.
It's a story of female empowerment and getting back at men. Let's just say that.
Sign me up. I'm write that one up there. Right.
Okay, good. That'll be hopefully done in another year or two. It's being accomplished by some very young woman animators who are just finishing their animation degrees at the university here, and we're really excited about working with them on this old but very modern story.
Now, we know that you will be appearing at Kapaemahu. Am I saying that correctly? Am I doing it well?
Yeah, pretty close.
Okay, sorry. I was saying it like back to back to back for a while, sure. And then, but where else can we see it? It's coming to Atlanta in September. Where are some other places that people can see it? Where will it eventually end up? And what would you like to see it take place? Because I see this being like in schools and everything. Kids would very much so relate to it.
Well, it's making the festival circuit now. It's going to be at Annecy in France, which is big for animators, and at Frameline, the LGBT festival, and many more. We agree that this could be a great educational film. Hina's shown it to young kids, K to sixth graders, and they seem to love it. The destination ultimately is going to be in the Bishop Museum, which is the biggest museum in Hawaii. It's a history and science museum, has one of the greatest collections in the Pacific. And there's going to be a large exhibit about the story of Kapaemahu, about Hawaiian healing methods, about voyaging and how these ideas got around, and about third gender across the Pacific. So it'll be available here at the Bishop Museum, not until spring of 2022. Hopefully people can visit by then. And then we'll be trying to make that some sort of virtual exhibit as well.
Oh, that sounds great. Has it already been revered in Hawaii? Like, is it already being shown there somewhere, or is it still just going through the festival circuits?
It's going through the festival circuit right now, and we are planning to show it in Hawaii. We really want to be able to do that down in Waikiki, where the stones are. I think that's really important. So we're going to have to wait a little bit until people can go back to Waikiki. And we'll certainly be working on that. And we'll be collaborating with the Bishop Museum and the local tourism industry. We'd like to get the film seen by everybody that comes to Hawaii. So,
right.
Hoping that it'll be on airplanes as well. And we have some good relationships.
Well, that's great. Anything else? Oh, wait a minute. Let's check and see if we have some questions.
Sure.
I'll put my glasses back on to see if we've gotten any questions in. Let's see. Krupa, do we have any questions? We kind of started a little early. Well, let's say this. Do you have anything that you want to do that's more sciencey? Now, look, that's such a scientific term, right? Sciencey. Do you have anything that's more in line of specific scientific research, or something that's less creative looking?
Sure. I think one of the things that is developing out of the Kapaemahu project is an interest in traditional medical practices in Hawaii. So I am interested in investigating and collaborating with people that are trying to better understand how that fits in today. I'm not somebody who says we should get rid of Western medicine. I'm very keen on getting a vaccine. I worked in the vaccine branch at the NIH for many years. But I think what's interesting about the Hawaiian approach is that it really tries to treat the whole person rather than the disease. And that includes people's spiritual health and their mental health. And I think that's going to be important. So it'll be great to have treatments for really important, but there's still going to be a lot of trauma that's been caused by this pandemic. There's going to be a lot of problems that, people that have lost loved ones, people who have suffered. And I think that these additional, some would call them alternative approaches, could really be important.
How do you think this is going to change our culture? I mean, you've been studying changes through genetics, but how do you think socially and genetically this will change us as a people over the next 10, 20, 30 years?
A lot, and I'm not sure how exactly.
And that is a scientific term, right?
I hope that it will democratize our processes, because like everybody's equal now, and it doesn't make any difference whether I'm sitting in a $20 million house or in a phone booth. I'm just this person, on screen. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that it will not eliminate the social factor to all of our lives, because that's an important one. But, everybody's kind of wait and see right now.
Right. We had someone that wants to know, what was your favorite part about making this film?
Oh, my personal very favorite part as this geeky guy was when I was in the university library and looking around in a box from 1905 of papers from Thrum, and we found the original manuscript at the bottom of the box. And I was like, okay, this is like the very original thing. And it's so important because if you look today at the story of Kapaemahu, you'll see all different types of versions. Like, instead of being transgender, they were male or female, or they were not homosexual, or they were this or that. So finding the actual piece, that was really a lot of fun.
Well, and someone else wants to know, what type of animation did you use? And I think I saw second rigging, was that? I saw it popped up real quickly.
I think Daniel used, it's 2D animation. It's done on a computer, but frame by frame, or cell drawing. So every frame is individually drawn and treated. And then Daniel also uses Blender a little bit. So sometimes, like, there's a scene where we're having a ceremony and the camera is moving around the four stones as the four mahu transfer their powers into them. So he does that as a three-dimensional type of scene and rotates around it, and then that comes out to be flat. And that's all I know about animation.
I truly loved how you transported through time, like how the time changes occurred, and it was so smooth and swift, and yet you just saw the changing of time happening in front of you. It was like looking at dance. While I was watching. It was great.
Thank you for that, because that's about 1,000 years of Hawaiian history in about 30 seconds.
Right.
And my first draft of the storyboard, it was about 5 minutes of dialogue.
Right.
And ultimately, together with Hina and Daniel and Joseph, we all realized you don't really have to say anything. Just the picture of a missionary in a ship and all these big buildings coming up, that tells you a lot, and people recognize right away. So that was a really fun part of the film to do, to get that much history condensed in that short a time.
Right. It was very, very effective. So how do you think, having worked on this project now and compared to the projects that you've worked before, how will this affect you moving forward? I think how you write moving forward.
Sure. I think we'll probably continue doing a combination of classic documentary work, because we're so interested in history, and that's the best way to tell that. But we also recognize more and more that animation is such a creative and a wonderful way to tell these stories about, the supernatural or legendary types of characters. So I quite enjoy the combination. I think the other thing we learned is that another really important part of the film is the chant that is performed by Kamaka'iva. And in Hawaiian oral tradition, a lot of the history was done through chant. It's a way to help memorization of long genealogies and long stories. And we were really fortunate to get a legendary Hawaiian chanter who also happens to be Mahu to compose a separate piece for this.
Yes, it's very simple. I mean, chanting does come through so many of our cultures. I was raised Catholic, so we had that. But also with my husband is from Gambia, West Africa, and the griot, the role of the griot, and the history telling throughout the generations, and we all have that aspect in each of our cultures, especially when you go back to our ancient cultures. And so I just found myself, I felt like a little kid watching it, being all drawn in, and that was great. And let me see, I'm gonna check some more questions here. Now, right now you're kind of in limbo a little bit. You're still working on a next project, but still promoting this project. And the whole world has kind of been on pause. So as an artist and as a creative person, where does that put you in your mindset? Like, are you more disciplined? Are you less disciplined? Are you finding yourself more pumped or more relaxed?
Well, that's a complicated question, but what I would say is what's always worked for me is just to devote an hour or two every morning to the creative stuff, which right now is writing a new script. Or it may be editing a documentary. And to do that before the rest of the day and all the concerns pop in. It used to be I'd worry about our next trip to town and who we're going to talk to. Now it's mostly how am I going to improve my baking skills and should I really get on TikTok or not? So the epidemic is definitely having an effect.
I'm trying to avoid
still there.
I'm trying to avoid the pull of TikTok. I have a teenager at the house, so it's hard. But I'm trying to avoid the pull. But my choreography skills are off. Now, what you mentioned earlier about some of the things that you found, but what were some other cool things that you learned or discovered while making this project?
It was really interesting to see how the story of Kapaemahu and these 4 transgender healers got changed over time, and only slowly to realize why they were changed. So the stones had been buried under a bowling alley and then got dug up in the 1960s. But when they were dug up, the Mahu part about the story was suddenly suppressed. And we were kind of, why? Why would it be suppressed in Hawaii? It turns out the same year, Hawaii passed a law that required transgender or transsexual showgirls to wear a button saying, I am a boy or I am a girl, depending on their sex. Because some sailor had picked up a trans girl and gone home and then gotten in a big fight, and I think got beat up, actually. So
got beat up by the dancer?
By the dancer, yeah. So there was all of a sudden all this concern, and there was articles in the paper, and these transgender people are trying to fool our soldiers, and they're doing bad things, and they're getting people to buy them booze and stuff. And so that's why suddenly having Mahu associated with these stones, people were thinking maybe not such a good idea. Same thing happened in the 1990s. The stones were given a new home on a beautiful stone platform, really wonderful work done on restoring them. And yet the Mahu part got not only obliterated, but suddenly there was this new story that these are the not homosexual healing stones, which doesn't make any sense at all. It turns out the people involved were also involved in a church that was lobbying against same-sex marriage that year. We had a big political fight in Hawaii. And so that was all really tied together. And again, it was almost like people were saying, well, we better not say the truth about these stones, because if people know the truth, they won't properly respect them. So kind of a surprising bit of history. It wasn't really so much the missionaries that suppressed this history as people right in the modern day.
Well, that happens a lot of times when cultures are being challenged by outside voices, and some people wonder, they want something new or they want something that seems more familiar. I don't know, but everyone has some type of challenge in accepting their natural, authentic selves in some place.
It does.
someone else would like to know, are you bringing this to the Bay Area at all, since there's such a big community, Pacific Islander community there?
We will be, and I'm not sure if I'm supposed to announce, but anyway, it will be at Frameline, and there's going to be a virtual festival in the Bay Area on Pride weekend on June 25th, I think. So there will be a chance to see it then, and I hope you guys will tune in. And we have great friends all through the Bay Area, Oakland. So aloha, y'all. Yeah.
Okay, so we're a little early, but wanted to just a few more things in terms of what someone also wanted to just get a little bit more detail. You said you're working on the next project. Is it another animated project? And could you repeat what you were doing on that?
Sure. There's a wonderful Hawaiian story. It's about Pele, who's the fire goddess or volcano goddess, when she encounters Kamapua'a, who is the pig god and who is very pig-like. Really, he's like a pig. And Kamapua'a sees Pele and is so enticed by her that he tries to get with her. And she's like, no, because you're really a pig and I don't want to be with you. He gets so mad that he tries to rape her. And in desperation, Pele calls out to her sister, Kapo, who's on another island. And Kapo has her own superpower. She reaches down and detaches her vagina and hurls it in the direction of the pig. And when it floats by his nose, it is so fragrant and so plump that he is drawn away from Pele and goes chasing after the vagina. And he turns into a fish and chases it across the ocean and all the way to Oahu, the island where we live, where it lands in a mountaintop and it creates this big crater. And Kamapua'a jumps into it, thinking that he's inside her, only to realize that the vagina has returned and gone back to Kapo where it belongs, and that he's been tricked. And that creates a creator called Coco Head. It's one of the big creators on Oahu, which has the proper name Kohe Lepe Lepe, or the flying vagina of Kapo. And so that's what we're trying to animate. And as you can imagine, it really needs to be done in animation.
Properly, yes. That's some special effects, but definitely great for the Time's Up community.
Yeah,
Exactly. It's empowerment. If I've ever heard of P-Power, that is definitely it, right?
Right.
But I just wanted to thank you so much for talking to us today. I'm going to repeat some of the business that we had going on with Atlanta Film Festival, but I definitely, I can't go on about how much we really enjoyed the short and how much we, really felt the energy and the spirit of, I felt very connected to the film, and I think that's what great energy moving forward with any projects of all projects that you're working on. I love that, here in Atlanta, the whole concept of gender fluidity and, this is a place that people like to look at Georgia as being in the past, but it's such a progressive city. Atlanta is such a progressive city, and Metro Atlanta is just growing more and more. So these topics, although they seem like they're being fought, we're really stepping into a new generation of acceptance of all types of people.
Well, thank you. And on behalf of myself and Daniel, our animator, and Joe, my partner, and Hinale Moana Wang Kalu, we really appreciate the opportunity. I just think it's really wonderful to have an opportunity to share this very Hawaiian story with people all over the world, and especially people in Atlanta. So thank you.
Oh, definitely. Thank you so much. I'm going to check to see if we have any more questions from the audience. Now, have you been to Atlanta? Look, I'll get a couple of this while we look. Have you been to Atlanta? Have you come through to Atlanta?
I've been in Atlanta back when I was a scientist. I've been to Emory, and I've been there several times. Great place. Not yet as a filmmaker. I was kind of looking forward to an East Coast tour because we had Tribeca and Atlanta and Montclair all together, but I guess it'll be virtual for now.
For now, I think we all as a world kind of needed a pause. I was saying this is Mother Nature being like, okay, I need a break. Everyone is in timeout. So I think
Yes.
it's frustrating, but we all kind of needed a pause to reconnect and understand what's important. But thank you so much for taking this time to talk to us tonight.
Mahalo. Aloha.
Aloha. Just a couple of last things again, everyone, make sure you go to the atlantafilmfestival.com. Go to the website to get any updates on any films, any classes, any workshops, events. We have Eat, Drink, and Be Indie that is now online. We just had the first one this week, I believe. But make sure you look for all of the information. We are all virtual now, so thank you so much. And make sure you tune in next week, next Thursday at 7 o'clock. We will be interviewing Danielle Deadweiler. I'm very excited about that. So thank you so much.